My name Josh. I'm 22. Moved to the city 3 months ago and everything since has been one long balancing act. Rent's high, freelance gigs come and go, and I still don't know how I feel about calling this place home. I'd been couch hopping for weeks when my friend Don offered a solution. Stay at my place for a few days, he said. My mom won't mind. I didn't have other options, so I said yes. I knew Don from school. We met freshman year. He's the kind of guy everyone likes. Quick to laugh, always the center of a group. I wasn't. But we clicked anyway. Spent late nights grinding through projects, crashing on each other's floors, talking about dumb stuff until sunrise. I'd been to his house before. A few times, actually. Nothing ever stood out to me. Not until that day. It was a Thursday. Late afternoon. I rang the doorbell, expecting him to open it. Instead, it was her. Pamela. She was older, 41, maybe, but she didn't look it. Or rather, she didn't wear it the way most people do. She had this presence. The kind that doesn't ask for attention but gets it anyway. Her hair was tossed up, no makeup, wearing this oversized white shirt that hit just above her thighs. Like she'd just woken from a nap or maybe finished cleaning. She looked at me and smiled. "Oh, it's you," she said, like I was someone she'd been expecting, even though I knew she wasn't. I remember stepping inside and thinking, act normal. The house smelled like lemon and old wood. It was quiet. Too quiet. Dawn was still at work. She offered iced tea and made it like it was second nature, not like she had company. Just, fluid. I sat at the kitchen island, trying not to stare, trying not to think about the way her shirt slipped off one shoulder, or how her voice had this soft, textured quality like it was always on the edge of telling you a secret. We talked. About school. About Dawn. She asked about my work, what I wanted to do, where I thought I'd end up. No small talk. Just real things. I remember thinking, she's not treating me like a kid. At one point, she laughed and said, "You know, you're not like Dawn's other friends. You're quieter. You see things." I didn't know what to say, so I said, "Thanks." That was it. Nothing happened. But something had shifted. Quietly. The next few days passed in a blur. I tried not to think too much about it, our kitchen conversation, her smile, the way she'd looked at me that afternoon. But the truth is, I thought about it more than I should have. The thing is, Pamela didn't act differently after that day. She was just, her. Cool, unbothered, moving through the house like nothing had changed. Maybe nothing had. Maybe it was just in my head. But when I caught her glancing at me during breakfast, or when she brushed past me in the narrow hallway and didn't move away fast, I started to wonder. She started showing up when Dawn wasn't around. Just coincidentally, I guess. Like the night I stayed up late working on a resume and she came into the kitchen in her robe. Not rushed. Not sleepy. Just there. She poured herself some water, leaned against the counter, and asked me if I ever missed home. I told her I wasn't sure what home even meant anymore. She looked at me for a long moment before nodding. "Yeah," she said quietly. "That makes sense." Then she padded off into the hallway, and I was left there with my laptop, feeling like I'd just confessed something I hadn't realized I was carrying. Another night, she asked if I wanted to watch a movie. Dawn was out late, again. She said she found an old DVD in a drawer and thought it might be funny. Something from the 90s. We didn't watch much of it. Her legs were tucked under her, a throw blanket wrapped around both of us. Her head rested lightly against my shoulder at one point. I didn't move. I barely breathed. When she shifted slightly and her hand touched mine under the blanket, she didn't pull it away. We didn't talk about it. There was no flirting. Not really. Nothing I could call out loud. Just this strange, slow pull between us that neither of us acknowledged but also didn't resist. Not even when she walked into the living room one morning, still drying her hair from the shower, in that same white bathrobe that barely held together. She stopped in the doorway, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Do you always look like that?" Her voice wasn't teasing. It wasn't casual. It was different. Measured. Honest. I didn't know how to answer. So I didn't. And she didn't press. But that's when I knew we'd both crossed something, even if neither of us moved. That Friday night, Don left town to visit his dad. Said he'd be gone till Sunday. It wasn't unusual, his weekends were always unpredictable, but the moment he told me, I felt something shift inside me. I didn't want it to. But it did. Saturday morning, I was alone in the kitchen when Pamela came in. Her energy felt different. Still calm, still poised, but there was something in the way she looked at me. Like the words she'd held back all week were suddenly closer to the surface. She made coffee, quietly. The kind that smelled too good to ignore. I sat at the table, unsure whether I should say anything. Then she turned, cup in hand, and said, "We have 2 days. I don't want to waste them in silence." That line. It didn't sound romantic, didn't sound planned. Just honest. Too honest. My heart skipped in a way that made my skin feel warm. I nodded, slowly. I don't either. We didn't talk after that. Not really. We just moved through the day together. She asked if I wanted to help her cook something simple for lunch. I said yes, not because I was hungry but because I didn't want to leave the room. We worked side by side. She chopped. I stirred. There were long pauses where our hands brushed by accident and neither of us pulled away. She made a joke about the garlic being too strong. I laughed too hard. My hands were shaking, just a little. We ate on the living room floor, sitting across from each other. She tucked one leg under herself, leaned back on one arm, and told me about a trip she once took to Italy. I told her I'd never even been on a plane. "Maybe you should," she said. "There's more out there than what you've seen." "I know," I said. "But sometimes it feels easier not to look." There was a pause then, thick and full and heavy. "I get that," she whispered. And then silence again. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind that fills a room with possibility. The kind that feels like standing on the edge of something without needing to jump. Later that night, we put on another movie. The couch felt smaller than usual. I sat back and she settled beside me, her head finding the space between my shoulder and chest like it had always belonged there. Her hand rested on mine, fingers gently tracing the space between knuckles. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. There was no rush. No dramatic moment. Just that dangerous quiet where everything is understood and nothing needs to be spoken. We stayed in that quiet bubble for 2 days. Nobody called. Nobody visited. Time felt suspended. Saturday melted into Sunday without much structure. We made pancakes that morning, her idea. She said she always added cinnamon and nutmeg. I didn't even know people did that, but it tasted better than anything I'd made for myself in weeks. After breakfast, she put on a record. Actual vinyl. Something soft and jazzy that made the kitchen feel warmer. She danced a little while washing the dishes, and for the first time, I saw her not as someone mysterious or older, but just a person. Tired. Funny. Beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with looks. We watched another movie in the afternoon, neither of us could follow the plot. I think she picked it just for the background noise. Her legs were draped across mine. Her head against my chest again. At one point, she looked up and said, "I haven't felt alive like this in a long time." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to say something profound. Another part wanted to ask what she meant. But I didn't. I just reached over and touched her hand, tracing a line from her knuckles to her wrist. It was enough. That night, we ordered food but barely touched it. She curled up against me on the couch. We didn't kiss. We didn't need to. Everything between us was in the way we moved, how close we sat, the way our breaths synced. We talked. About music. About books. She asked me if I ever felt like life just moved without asking you. I told her yes, all the time. She told me about the job she left years ago, something she'd loved but gave up for reasons that didn't feel like hers. She didn't go into detail, and I didn't push. I used to think it was just a phase, she said. This feeling like I disappeared while no one was looking. You didn't disappear, I said before I could think it through. You just paused. She gave me a look I didn't understand at first. Half gratitude, half heartbreak. You're kind, she said. Too kind. And for a second, I wanted to believe we'd found something outside of time. Something real. Something safe. But deep down, I knew, this space only existed because no one else was around. Sunday morning came with a different kind of quiet. No music. No movies. No lazy dancing in the kitchen. We were up early, but we didn't speak much. I helped clear the dishes from last night's meal. She wiped the counter in slow, distracted circles. There was something in the air, something neither of us wanted to name. When I turned around with a stack of clean plates, she was standing there, arms crossed, leaning against the fridge like it was holding her up. This can't go on, she said. Just like that. No warning. And it wasn't a question. It wasn't even emotional. Just a statement. Like something she'd rehearsed before I walked in. I nodded. I didn't ask why, because I already knew. We'd created a space that wasn't built to last. Borrowed time. Beautiful, impossible, temporary. She walked into the living room while I packed my things upstairs. It didn't take long, I hadn't brought much. When I came back down, my bag slung over one shoulder, she was sitting on the couch with her knees drawn up, wrapped in a loose blanket. The same spot where we'd sat the night before. Where she'd laughed. Where she'd leaned into me. She stood when I entered, walked to the door without saying anything. I followed. We didn't speak again until I was standing in the open doorway. The outside felt brighter, colder than it should have. She turned and hugged me. Tight. Her arms wrapped around me like she was trying to remember what I felt like. Her face pressed near my neck. No kiss. Just warmth. And silence. But in that silence, I heard everything she wasn't saying. Take care of yourself. Don't forget this. I wish things were different. And then she stepped back. I gave a nod, too full for words. She didn't follow me out. She didn't watch me go. I don't think I could have handled it if she had. I walked to the street without looking back. The door clicked shut behind me. Not with a bang. Just that soft, final sound that stays with you. I moved into a new apartment the next week, one bedroom, nothing fancy, but mine. The walls were bare, the windows drafty, the floor creaked when I walked across it in socks. But it was quiet. And I needed quiet. I threw myself into work. Picked up more freelance gigs than I could handle. Designed websites, wrote copy, even edited a video project for a guy I barely knew. I didn't care what the job was. As long as it kept my hands busy and my head distracted. But the thoughts didn't leave. They came when I made coffee in the morning and reached for the cinnamon, even though I never used it before her. They came when I heard a certain kind of music in a cafe, soft, jazzy, like the record she played while dancing with a spatula in hand. They came when I brushed my fingers over a throw blanket at the store and remembered the one she tossed over both of us without asking. I found myself looking for her in crowds, in subway cars, in the curve of a stranger's voice. Every once in a while, I thought I saw her from behind, dark hair pulled up, head tilted just so, but it was never her. Of course it wasn't. There was this weird grief, and it didn't make sense. How do you mourn something that was never yours? I never told Don. How could I? He asked once, casually, if things had been weird between his mom and me. I shrugged. Not really. He nodded, seemed satisfied, and that was it. He moved on. I didn't. One night, weeks later, I found a shirt at the back of my drawer. Something I'd worn at their place. It still smelled faintly like her laundry detergent. Like warmth and something floral I couldn't name. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding it, for longer than I want to admit. Not crying. Just remembering. And that's what scared me the most. I wasn't trying to remember. The memories were just there, waiting. Embedded in sounds and colors and smells. As if 2 days could brand themselves into the background of my life. As if some part of me had stayed in that quiet house with her. And wasn't coming back. It had been almost a year. I didn't think about her every day anymore, but sometimes the memory would sneak in when I least expected it. A passing scent, a certain softness in the air, that feeling you get just before summer really begins, warm, full of something you can't name. Then one afternoon, out of nowhere, I got a message. It was simple: I think you left something here. Might be worth running over. No punctuation. No emojis. Just her. I stared at it for a long time before replying. When I got to the house, I stood outside for a moment before knocking. The porch light was off. The house looked the same. Untouched. She opened the door. Her expression didn't change much, just a brief flicker of something like surprise, then calm. That same calm I remembered. The kind that made me feel like everything might be okay, even if it wasn't. She let me in. The air inside was familiar. Vanilla. Warmth. Quiet. We talked. Light stuff at first, my new job, her garden, how Dawn was doing. I didn't ask why she messaged me. I think we both knew it wasn't about whatever I supposedly left behind. Then, after a pause, I asked, "Do you regret it?" She was quiet for a second. Then, "I only regret that I want it again." It wasn't flirtation. There was no smile on her lips. It was honest. Almost tired. I nodded, because I felt the same. But we both knew it couldn't happen again. So we stood in the hallway. She reached out and hugged me. It wasn't like before. It wasn't urgent or filled with longing. It was slow, steady. Like something final. Her chin rested near my shoulder, and for a moment we just breathed. And that was it. No goodbye. No promises. No long look as I walked away. I left. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. There were no tears. No dramatic moments. Just silence. But it was loud, that silence. The kind that sits on your chest. Some stories don't need a sequel. They end where it still hurts. And maybe that's what makes them unforgettable.